Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
I'm already so tired. We haven't even started, and I'm so tired.
I'm excited. I'm
Are you?
super pumped, yeah.
Okay,
We've literally never talked about this show on the show before.
We referenced it a handful of times in the way that George R. R. Martin plots things.
Well, sure, but not in any in-depth, anything. So I'm excited to talk about it.
I am too. I just hope that I'll be able to, remember everything, because for a hot minute, I started to go back and watch it all, and I was like, I do not have that kind of time.
Me neither. I would have loved to rewatch some of it, but I got no time, and I got no patience for some of this bullshit.
Okay, hello everybody, I'm Will.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show. On today's episode, we are going to attempt to, it's going to be a freeform discussion.
Yeah.
We're just going to talk about the first 7 season of Game of Thrones, and mostly characters. I kind of feel like we'll go by character. I took some notes, but they're mostly just talking points, because you and I have had so many discussions about this over the years.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things I was nervous about, is because we both know how the other one feels. And so I was like, I don't know how, we have a problem having the same conversation over and over again.
Yeah,
but
we'll manage. Also, watching all of those behind the episode clips to refresh before this was, first of all, a brilliant decision on your part. And it introduced some more things that I have to talk about. So we can get there.
That's what I started to say earlier, was that instead of watching the entire show, I stumbled upon it too. I don't remember how I had the idea, but at the end of every episode, there's a 6-minute inside the episode.
Yeah.
Where the showrunners and sometimes a couple cast members will discuss key talking points. And so I just started with season 1, episode 1, and just went through and watched all of them. So that in and of itself, at 6 minutes, an episode and 10 episodes a season, it took me several hours marked over several days.
Yeah.
To do, but it was a nice crash course. They don't cover everything, but
yeah, but it's a really good reminder of all of the things I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and they certainly explained a lot of things. Overall, we'll get into it, but I was going to say overall, we think it's a great show. That's not to say that there aren't things that could be critiqued or even outright criticized.
Yeah, and I was going to say, as much as I do love it, and I love the books, it is extremely from the male gaze and point of view, and I do love the show. I kind of don't love the fans, because it's a lot to me it's a lot like your complaint about people whose favorite band is the Beatles and whose favorite holiday is Christmas, where it's oh, do you think you're special? This is the largest TV show that HBO's ever put out. You're not cool because you like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It's not a personality.
When you started, I was kind of what are you getting at? No, I completely agree. Because I said it on Twitter, where I was on one hand, I am the most excited for Game of Thrones to come back so that we can finally finish it.
Yeah.
But I was on the other hand, my most basic friends on Facebook are already being the most about it. And it's only January. And that's something that kind of does boggle my mind, is how what I would consider a relatively complex show has managed to resonate with the lowest common denominator in so many ways.
I think it's a lot like how people like The Punisher. People like The Punisher the wrong way.
Okay.
People are he's just murdering and it's cool. And it's you are not catching any of the nuance, are you?
Uh-huh.
That's exactly. It's very similar to that, in my opinion.
And it's just I'll even see some of my most MAGA friends love this show. And I'm sort of where is the disconnect in your reality.
Right.
Like,
no, totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
100%.
because these two things are not the same. But do you want to start? I was going to say, let's start at the beginning. Where did it come into your life, and what did it mean to you?
Oh, well, this came into all of our lives around the same time. I actually, honestly, what year did this start? 2010?
11.
11. We were finishing up True Blood, right? And they kept on having
True
commercials.
Blood was like in season 3, I guess.
Was it? Okay, but we kept on seeing commercials for this because we used to, us and all of our friends used to get together to watch whatever Sunday HBO show was on.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever we were watching in the lead up to this, maybe it was Boardwalk Empire actually, but then you weren't there.
Yeah, well, I wasn't. So yeah, it was Boardwalk Empire because
Okay.
I didn't watch, because I joined the party late.
Okay, so it was Boardwalk Empire, and we kept on seeing these commercials, and they looked great, and we loved Sean Bean, and that was pretty much our only entry point. But what was so funny is that the font was so bananas that it just looked like it said Game of Thrones. Like it wasn't a distinguishable T. And so we were like, I know it's called Game of Thrones, but like, what the actual fuck? And so I just remember seeing the commercials, and we all were like, we're gonna watch that, right? And we all were like, yeah, totally. And then we did.
Yeah. I had just started Fairy Tale, like for real, not for play, because I had several starts with Fairy Tale, and I was having a hard time getting started. And I was at Hemingway, and you had been watching it, and this was before I had entered the group fully.
Yeah.
And I just remember having a conversation with you. I think we were even on the phone. We don't talk on the phone a ton, but you were like,
I hate it.
Yeah, but you were like, you need to watch the show. You will like it. Trust me. And you were like, I remember you telling me Lena Headey was on it. And I was like, well, I like her fine. She's been in things, like, whatever. Since Sarah Connor Chronicles. You know what I mean? Like, but I was sort of put out by it. And then one day I was exceptionally bored. And you advised me like 2 or 3 times. And then finally you were like, okay, you need to watch it. You were like, you need to watch it now.
Yeah.
Because you were like, something's going to happen and you need to be caught up.
Right.
So it was like,
Ned, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I went ahead and in one day watched episode 1 through 8 or 1 through 9. Because I saw Ned, I saw that alone. So it had to have been like episode 9 had just aired. And you were like, you need to watch this. And so I did. And I did take to it pretty quickly.
Yeah. And it's not 100% up your alley. It's like,
no,
it gets up your alley, but it doesn't start out there because it's a very like medieval drama, and the court intrigue is there, but it's like the fantasy stuff doesn't really rear its head for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, one of our favorite writers that we talk about all the time on the show, Price Peterson, he like had a tweet one time, or he made a statement where he was like, the greatest trick Game of Thrones ever pulled was convincing the world it wasn't a fantasy show.
Yeah, it 100% is.
Because it's
from the word go.
Yeah, it like starts off very medieval, like it almost like a historical drama. I also did see Amanda Peet in an interview where she was like pitching it on her husband's behalf. I want to say it was like Jimmy Kimmel. And I remember her giving like this really solid pitch. And I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, fine. Let me see what this is. But that's the interview where I learned the word milieu. And that was like a life-changing word for me.
It really was.
But,
you use that a lot.
because she said it was a medieval milieu. And I Googled that because I didn't know what it meant. So it was really good. It was very intriguing. And you're right. I mean, I guess to go to the fantasy thing, it is funny that like people were surprised by the fantastical elements of the show when they started to rear their heads, because it was a gradual process.
Yeah.
It started off very straightforward. And it's so funny to say that because when you actually think about it, the very first scene of the first episode is zombies.
Yeah, and the first book, the opening chapter of the first book is identical.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's wild that that's what happened.
And you managed to just forget all of that. It was something you told me when we were writing Fairy Tale, where you were like, people forget prologues. You were like, it's fine, go for it.
So pay extra attention to the prologue in the book we wrote. No, I definitely agree with that. And I will say it is something that is especially interesting in a book, and especially a series of books that when you start off, you have zero context for what's going on. So you read this thing and you read this opening kind of prologue-y chapter and you do forget because you have no more context into the book, into the world, and you don't get that context until you have already forgotten how it opened. And the show was very similar that way, which I think was one of the, coolest things they ever did with the show.
The opening?
Well, yeah, just like keeping it so close to the book, and the fact that even in a visual medium, so many people were able to forget that. So that when you get to the point where it's actually important later, you're like, oh fuck, that's right.
Because I remember we did all watch the finale together, because I remember quite literally fist pumping at the end of season 1 when Dany came out of the fire with the dragons.
Yeah.
Because there was a real moment where we were like, oh my god, are we going to actually get dragons on this show? And it's just like, it's wild to think back to a time where that was a question. It's also wild because I have seen the first season of this show probably 5 times.
Yeah, we watched it a lot.
I watched it with different people. And I lived in Savannah Bluff after that. And that was a house with, including myself, it was 6 people. And we all kind of watched it at a different time, so I saw it a bunch. And it's wild to go back and watch the first season because it's so much cheaper. It's like a budget version of the show, because they had no way of knowing
that it was going to be that big of a hit.
Like King's Landing in season 1 is like a brick wall with 2 palm trees.
Yeah, some tasteful ivy climbing the wall.
Yeah, it's crazy. But there is the famous scene in season 1 where Ned Stark is beheaded, the lead of our show. I truly believe that in a cultural way, it was a defining, like a game-changing moment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, up until that point, and that is something that HBO is so excellent at. I mean, similar things with The Sopranos and with Boardwalk Empire, and to an extent with True Blood, and all of their big sort of headlining shows have all had such a big impact on the world of television. But that very specifically does break your viewing as a human into 2 parts, and it is
there's a
pre-Ned Stark and post-Ned Stark. And it's like, now whenever we start a kind of prestige drama, I don't get attached to the main character for a while. And I think that is something very interesting and unique that this show specifically brought to the world.
Well, and also, I mean, this is something that we've talked about, absolutely, and this is something we talked about a little bit, but in a post-Game of Thrones world, we're very suspicious of male-female sibling relationships and stuff.
Also, yes. Look, if we had never watched Game of Thrones, we maybe wouldn't have been so suspicious of Cheryl and Jason on Riverdale. I mean, we think it's pretty blatant, but we might think it's blatant because we've had all these other twin incests and, starting with Game of Thrones. And so that's a very interesting thing to think about too.
I just to go ahead and say this, it's based on a book series written by George R.R. Martin. We think, now you guys have read the books. I have not. That's not within my capacity.
Oh no, I would never recommend them to you.
You've read sections
I read my
passages,
favorite. Yeah. My favorite series of chapters is during the Purple Wedding in book 3, I think. And it's one of the most masterful storytelling techniques I've ever read in a book, because it doesn't focus on any of the characters that are immediately affected by it, but it just shifts between Tyrion and Sansa for 6 chapters in a row. And it is, like I said, some of the most masterful writing I've ever read. It was so cool.
And that's something you explained to me, because I have only the show's understanding, and so frequently you would tell me, if something was changed from the book, or because you explained to me that the book is told through perspective chapters.
Yes,
where each chapter is based on a character's POV, and for a while there's only certain characters that are getting point of view. So it was
there's only 6 in the first book.
And there are some characters that I think are, I think of as leads and that are very fleshed out on the show that never did get point of view chapters. Like Marjorie, at least thus far, has never had a point of view chapter in the books.
Correct.
And you were so because I think I asked you a question about her, and you were like, "That's hard to tell." You were like, "Because in the book, we're only getting either Sansa's version of her or Cersei's version of her,
which are two extremes." Exactly. Yeah, and exactly. And so it's sort of, but by that point in the books, you trust Sansa so much more implicitly than you would trust Cersei, because Sansa's been having chapters the whole time and Cersei has not, and Cersei is already well on her way to like virulent paranoia, and so Cersei only views Marjorie as like a threat to her specifically, and so she's making this case that Marjorie is like
smirking whore from Highgarden.
Exactly, and that she's only putting on a show and blah blah blah, but her actions are telling you that she actually cares about Sansa. She's actually being nice to Sansa, blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, I think they made Marjorie a lot more scheming in the show than she reads in the book.
Okay. I was thinking you were going to say the opposite, but
no,
well, okay, you like it.
I like it, but she, in my opinion, in the books, she's a lot more...
passive.
Not necessarily passive, because she does still kind of go after the power, but she's not scheming in the way that she appears to be in the show. But I did love it, and Natalie Dormer is wonderful at it.
This is actually exactly where I was trying to get to, but there is one more thing I want to say before we go full conversation here, is that I did want to mention it is show run by two men by the name of David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, and it cannot be said enough how attractive David Benioff is.
He really is.
I just feel like that needs to be said.
It does. He really is very...
D.B. Weiss is handsome too, but in like a he writes on a show kind of thing.
Right.
Where D.B. Weiss, I mean, you could put him in a room with Michael Huseman, and I wouldn't be sure which one was Dario Naharis.
David Benioff, you mean?
Yeah. Did I say D.B.
Yeah.
again?
I was Benioff. Like, they are different human beings. I don't. Also, if we're going off the book, D.B. Weiss would be a better Dario Naharis. He's, like, hideous.
Oh, well, D.B. Weiss isn't hideous. He just is more like he looks like he would write for South Park in a way that...
That's true, he does.
David Benioff looks like he maybe modeled 10 years ago. And he just has this head of hair that it's stupidly cut. It's like too short halfway through the inside the episodes. And
I did notice after you said it, it's a little too short, yeah.
So I wanted to say that. So, because we will be probably mentioning all three of those men, George R. Martin, David, and DB. So I wanted to get that out there. But basically from here, we're just going to kind of talk about freeform characters. I did write down ones I wanted to talk about. I have a handful of notes, but I just figured the best way, and that's sort of our brand, that's what we do. So we couldn't have started in a more perfect place for us with Sansa, Marjorie, and Cersei.
True. That's true. Although now it is only downhill from here.
We'll have things to say. So those are probably, they're on brand for us, and those are probably our favorite characters. You were talking about Marjorie, so I was going to say we could just continue down that path. In the stuff that I was watching, they were basically saying that Marjorie and Cersei were the same person, just with different opportunities.
Oh, okay.
They said like they were cut from the same cloth, where they said Marjorie is an example of what Cersei could have been if any of her gifts were nurtured.
I was going to say if any of her gifts were nurtured, or if she had a decent parent figure.
Exactly. And
because I think Marjorie's mother is also dead, but her father is kind of a buffoon, and she couldn't have asked for a better role model than Olenna. Mm-hmm. But like Cersei's mother died, and Tywin is useless as a parent figure, and to my knowledge, she only ever had, septas after that. So it's like she was given no opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And she also, the Tyrells are unique, at least my understanding is they are a unique family, and that they are, I think, the sole family in this world that is matriarchal.
I think they are officially patriarchal, but the women take the charge, but the men have the title.
Mm-hmm. Olenna is the grand, high dame, she's the head of the household for the Tyrell family. And that's something that it's like Cersei absolutely has the drive and the vision and I'll say vision. She has the desire and the will, but it was never nurtured. It was never and so it forced her to resort to, scheming, and it turned her. It's so funny because in the behind the scenes stuff, they constantly are talking about how paranoid Cersei is becoming, but then they always follow that with rightfully so. And so I'm like, well, then it's not paranoia.
Right. And the other thing is it's not rightfully so, because nobody actually is ever until she goes too far, which admittedly is like early season 3, but until she goes too far, nobody is actively scheming to take away her throne or take away her children or anything. And in that way, she very much is the maker of her own demise. You know, in nurturing her own paranoia to such a degree, she made sure all of the things she most feared happened.
Okay. I love Cersei.
I love her too. That doesn't make me wrong.
This is for the audience. It was a very, it was a very genuine and real passion for this character that happened quickly. I just immediately gravitated to her. I do like Lena Headey. I had an affinity for her, but it's like, poof, at this point. And you have to consider the whole. Okay, oh God, because I am pro Cersei and Jaime. And I understand.
I'm pro them too. I get it. I'm not anymore. I was for a time.
Yes, but I'm just saying it's like for you to say that like she is the maker of all of her own stuff. It's like she was in survival mode from such an early position, because it's like her base relationship, the cornerstone of her world is wrong and a secret, so it has to be hidden. Incest disclaimer, just whatever. I know it's bad, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about fantasy here. And frankly, also historically, there is a case for all of this shit, you know?
I mean,
but
FDR married his cousin.
No, I know, but it's like...
That was like 60, 70 years ago. Not that long ago.
Just spare us the middle-class morality. It's not like they were brother and sister. They were, what, third cousins?
It's just something that I was able to relate to that level of shame. And it was always less... weird for me and you. It was always less weird that they were twins, and we are constantly met with that makes it worse.
I disagree. I don't know. I disagree.
I mean, cue the House of Yes soundbite. It's like fucking a mirror. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't. I'm not saying in reality it's a good idea for twins to start fucking all across the world. However. It makes sense in the context of this show. It makes total sense to me, and if we are actually having this argument, the fact that it's twins just makes you genetically more similar. They share half their DNA with each other. It's like fucking a mirror.
And this is also a fantasy. Like I said, this is pure fantasy in our minds, and we are talking about Lena Headey and Nikolai Coster-Waldau. So there is a healthy dose of to say the word third time fantasy in this argument and in these conversations. So yes,
but I mean, I love the argument that, because I don't remember who Cersei opens up to, but she opens up to somebody about it relatively early on.
Ned.
Is it Ned? So it's
Ned.
in season 1 then. And she's like, we always used to comfort ourselves when we were younger, that if we were Targaryens, it wouldn't make a difference. Because they would have married each other if they were Targaryens. So this is like, in addition to us knowing that Jaime and Cersei are sleeping together and have been for the majority of their lives, we also know that within the world of this show, that is not a taboo. It's not as big a taboo as it is in our world. The Targaryens marry brother and sister to each other, and that's why they're mad. But it's a thing that happens. Yeah, it takes generations, but it's not as out of the realm of possibility as we have it.
Because Cersei is the one who says the thing.
Yeah,
she is the character who says,
"When you play the Game of Thrones, you win. Or you die."
And it's in that conversation with Ned. And it's really striking because she has two very intimate, very real conversations, one with Ned and one with Catelyn, where she is being completely forthright. It's not a tactic. It's not a scheme. She's actually connecting with these people. And it's something that they said where they were like, Cersei will lie in the grand scheme of things, like in political reason, like, stuff, but they were like, when she has an emotional scene, it is honest, it's real. It's like that was a true glimpse of her real person when she has that scene with Kat where she says, we're praying for Bran. She meant that. Jamie is the one who threw him out the window. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like,
and that is such a good scene. That I'm glad you brought that scene up, because that's such a wonderful scene, because she comes there as a mother, and that is also the first hint we get that none of her children belong to Robert.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fascinating watching that scene over again after you know the truth at the end of the season. And I do agree with you. That is a moment of intense honesty for her when she comes to Catelyn as another mother who has lost a child. And again, when she does open up to Ned at the end of the season, like episode 8, I guess, but they both are, I agree. And I think Lena Headey is one of the performers of this series.
Well, you always said that, like, she brings something to Cersei that's not on the page.
Oh, absolutely. Because Cersei doesn't get chapters for, it's
book 4.
Yeah, she does, but it's not for a while. But, so you are only seeing Cersei for a long time from other people's perspectives. And so I like that we get her perspective sooner in the show.
And I think I think it's a very specific talent that Lena Headey has to be able to express through coldness. It's bizarre because it sounds contradictory, but watching, what she does with, like, a lip quiver or an eyebrow or, like, a nostril flare, and just, like, because the role of Cersei was originally cast, it was given to Carice Van Houten.
Oh.
And she, for some reason, was unable to take it, and that is when Peter Dinklage recommended Lena Headey, because they were personal friends.
Yeah.
And they brought in Lena, and not to imply that Carice Van Houten couldn't have done it, but I feel like
could have.
we would have gotten a more straightforward Cersei. I feel like she would have, I don't think that there would have been quite the level of nuance.
Well, and there's also something to be said for, once they started making changes from the books, and then once they got beyond the books, I think there's an argument to be made that certain things would be different if it had been Carice Van Houten.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe they wouldn't have gone to a couple of the places that they went to. They might have strayed a little differently, and so
For clarity, Carice Van Houten goes on to play Melisandre, so she is on the show now. We'll get to Melisandre.
I think she's much better suited to that role. She's like a beautiful, stoic, kind of striking Dutch woman.
The night is dark and full of terrors. What is her? There's a video of her audition for Melisandre, and she forgets halfway through.
Behold the son of fire, behold, all hail the warrior of the night, the warrior of fire.
And it's so funny because we're here. Let's do it.
Okay.
I hate it. Flames on the side of my face hated Melisandre for like 4 seasons.
Oh, I didn't hate her for that long.
I hated her. And then in one instant, I was 100% there. I also, let's be real, I hated Stannis Baratheon. Has there ever been a more worthless character in the history of characters? Like,
I think there were.
Are you the one that likes Stannis Baratheon?
I don't love Stannis Baratheon. I think there's an argument to be made that Stannis is necessary a couple of times.
Sure, but
he's so boring, and that's something that they admit in the book and the show.
It is.
Other people think Stannis is boring in the book, and they say the words directly in the show as well. But I do think, what is the actor's name?
I tried to come up with the order that we were going to talk about characters, and we're already so completely out the window.
I was like, nice try. Stephen Delane. So I do think Stephen Delane is doing, or you did, spoiler alert, I think he did a great job with Stannis, because even knowing that he was boring in the book and was going to be boring in the show, I think he did bring something a little less boring to the performance, while I still agree that Stannis is one of the more boring characters.
Stannis sucks.
He does suck, and he did a lot of bad things. I would say I think he overstayed his welcome, and he got to a point where he was nothing more than like a religious sycophant.
The Shireen stuff is beyond the pale. Yeah, we're not even going to go into that. Actually, the single most worthless character in the entire series is Shalise, or whatever his wife's name is. Oh God,
Shalise.
Do you remember when I was like a pile of dirty towels and a cape would be more appealing than her?
Yeah.
And then I was like, Kristen Stewart as herself would be more, because this is what I still hated Kristen Stewart.
That was back in the day when we still didn't like Kristen Stewart. Actually, what is her name? It's not Shalise, is it?
It's Shireen and Shalise or something. I think it's Shalise. It doesn't matter. She sucks.
She does suck. She's not dead, though, is she?
Yeah, she hanged herself. She's
that's
worthless.
Right.
Ugh. Okay, this brings me to an actual question, but religion and like the effect it has on people actually plays a role in a lot of the show.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is even very like between thinly and heavy-handedly veiled like metaphors and stuff, because isn't there like there's like a group of people, they weren't ever in the show, but there was like a group of people that follow a shepherd or something, and it was like very like, this is Jesus. Like I mean, you probably can't answer this, but are the gods real?
I mean, we don't ever see them in like a game of, or in magic. Like an American gods way.
But like the Lord of Light, I mean, he is apparently a fickle bastard.
Well, yeah.
And that's where we were talking about Melisandre, but that is the moment where she became fascinating to me, is the moment that she loses her certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a twofold. It was 1-2. It was her betting whole hog on something, and it failing, like flopping miserably.
And I mean, betting whole hog on the murder of a child.
Mm-hmm.
A literal child.
And then it is revealed, and I honestly think one of the better reveals in the show, and just in shows in general, because it's all implication, it's all subtext, and it's one of the things that could so easily just be a like what the fuck moment for the sake of what the fuck, but it changed my understanding of the entire character. And it's in season 6, I think 6, and she like takes off her necklace, and you realize that is where her power was coming from, and she's actually several hundred years old.
Yeah, she's like a crone.
And that just gave me a perspective as to how she's able to just sort of do so many of these things, like to be that old and to have witnessed as much as she's witnessed. You know, what is one death? What is uncertainty? What is like, I don't know. And there were no words spoken. She just sort of this like nude old woman just sort of stares at herself in a mirror and then goes to bed. I found it amazing.
Well, it's very wrenching, because you kind of you see her come in the room as Carice Van Houten, and she is visibly shaken. And, you know, having just watched the behind the scenes stuff, you know, I think it was David Benioff, he was like, she needs to look her true self in the eyes at that moment and come to grips with what she's done, like account for herself. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, because it also is interesting to me that that is what got her. It wasn't like birthing the demon baby or like anything she did before that or anything she did after that. It was killing Shireen, where she was like, was that the step too far? Is it because I did that the Lord of Light didn't answer me this time? Is it because he's not real? You know, she's questioning so many things.
Because gods are known to test.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, was that her like Abraham moment kind of thing? And so it's very, very, it's super interesting. And I agree. And even though I'm pretty sure that was not Carice Van Houten in old age makeup.
It was a combination.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
It was a very good portrayal all around.
Her face was in there. When you made that comment, I was like, no, there was a composite.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Because the actress wasn't that old. They're not going to strip an old lady. Like that.
No, of course. Yeah.
That was a whole thing. I want to go back to my general notes for just a minute, because I meant to say this at the top, but there were two things I was going to say. And one thing was I was going to ask you, just out of curiosity, Why do you think this show resonated? What about this show do you think? Because famously, there have been several shows that were statistically, like we had the numbers to back it up, the most popular show in the world.
Mhm.
And they're usually silly. Like Baywatch was one of them.
Okay.
And so what about this show do you think captured the world? Is that something you can answer? Am I putting you on the spot in like a crazy?
No. I mean, I have some ideas. I think I'm going to be a little bit more cynical about it than you want me to be, because I think like 60% of it is the tits.
I mean, that helps. I think the blood and the tits helps.
The blood and the tits got people in the door, and then people don't like to quit things that everybody's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of people just sort of hung on for the ride after
because as popular as True Blood was, it wasn't, although True Blood was very gay in a way that though there's gay stuff in Game of Thrones, True Blood had like an intrinsic queerness that isn't universal yet.
Also, all of the gay people on Game of Thrones have been murdered.
Yeah, but
so
I mean, I don't think that it's bury your gays. I mean, everybody.
Well, no, it's definitely not a bury. Nobody was like hard shipping Loras and his little fuck toy, but
yeah, no, nobody was.
Nobody but you.
Will, the stable boy? Yeah, no, nobody was.
Was that his name?
Uh-huh.
No, but
that was the actor's name. It was Will Travel. Was the actor's
Oh, okay.
name. So, or what's it? It was Will. I remember.
Will Travel is the guy from Jessica Jones.
Okay, yeah. So then, yeah, his name was Will.
Regardless, getting back to your actual question, I don't want to be that cynical, but I think most people watch this for the tits and the blood and the dragons.
But I was about to say the dragons came later, but it was popular out of the gate, but we were into season 3 and 4 by the time it was like a global phenomenon. So
right, and I also do.
I think it was a perfect storm. I agree with you. I think that the tits and the violence and the stuff. I think that was there. That was certainly a mass appeal thing because sex position was a thing before the. Well, was it?
Oh no, it was. No, 100%. Oh, always. That's always been a thing.
This really ushered it in. I mean, you're right. It's always been a thing, but I think this sort of set a precedent. You know, sort of like the pre-Ned Stark and post-Ned Stark, where these sort of like high concept prestige shows with like copious amounts of sex position became a thing.
I would argue True Blood did it more, but potentially on a scale, if we're like making the argument for scale, then yes, this was probably more. But I mean, this is a pretty critically acclaimed show too, so I know that that it is legitimately good. But I think as for like the mass audience, I think it's a lot more base than that.
Well, because I was going to say, we cannot undercut the quality of the show.
No, it's great.
Broad strokes overall, because you do have specific umbrages. But
I do. I think everybody should.
My second thing that I just wanted to say is I wanted to point this out, because I am in awe of this show on a weekly basis, especially in the later seasons, is there has never been anything like this on television before.
No, definitely not.
We got to season 4. When was the climb? Was that even in season 3?
The climb over the wall? It was 3 or 4.
Yeah.
With Egret?
Yeah, there were times where I was looking at this screen and I was like, the scale of this show, the quality and scale of the visual effects of beyond, the writing and acting, because television is full of great writing and acting, but like how gargantuan this show actually is. It's a behemoth, and that they are able to keep the reins as tight as they are. Like, it's truly a feat to marvel. I mean, you used to have to go to the movies and pay good money to see something even half this good, until you be able to sit at home and watch it. It's unreal in a way that I was reared on Hercules and Xena, and so which that was groundbreaking in its time.
For its time, yeah, absolutely. Well, I was gonna say I agree with you, because I also do think it has gotten more, because like we said, the scale of season 1 was quite a bit smaller, but the scope that they managed to imbue, like I understand how large Westeros is because of the work they've done on this show, and it's like the scope that they're able to manage on a TV budget, whether it be the largest TV budget going right now or not, is still very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely agree with you. I think it's wild what they've been able to do on television.
And the attention and commitment to detail is just like, it's astonishing. So going back into characters, we started off with Cersei and Marjorie and Sansa. Did you want to go into Sansa and then the Stark children?
Sure, yeah.
We are Sansa fans.
I'm a Sansa stan.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll take the heat for this.
And we were Sansa apologists from episode 1, really.
Yeah, for sure. The thing for me about Sansa, I love her so much. I have this issue, and people have slacked off on it now, but it's only because Sansa has become strong in a male way, in my opinion. So people have slacked off, but I have so much sympathy and respect for a female character who, through no fault of her own, she was raised to be a lady. That was that was what Kat and Ned did. She was the eldest daughter. She was going to marry a well-off lord and go live there and run his house. That was her job. She was preparing for that job her entire life. So when Joffrey
and taking it very seriously.
And so when Joffrey was thrust upon her, she was like, cool, I'm not going to be a lady, I'm going to be a queen. That's even better, isn't it? And then she was, at every single turn, punished for doing her job well. Mm-hmm. And that is infuriating to me because everybody was like, Sansa's such a fucking idiot. Can't she see he's evil? Blah, blah, blah. Going against the family, whatever. And I'm just sitting there seething inside. Again, flames on the side of my face. Because I'm like, she's literally doing the only thing she was ever told to do.
Because the scene, the particular scene that turned 1,000 heads the opposite way is when they ask about Arya attacking Joffrey. And you have the fate of these two, powerful families are rested in her hands. And never mind the fact that if she was honest and told the truth, they still would have gotten in trouble. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's like telling the truth wasn't an option for her. So she sided with Joffrey. She sided with the Lannisters. And Arya, as well as a million fans, never forgave her. And also, I feel like people never take into account that she paid for that. She
1,000 times over.
She lost her wolf, the first of the Stark children to lose their wolf, which, yeah.
So, I mean, even going forward from that, the argument that you and I like to make the most often is, okay, before I get to that, what I like to say is, because so many people who complain about it are men, like adult men. And I'm like, you have never been a 13-year-old girl. You don't know what any of this means. You don't know how you have to be a totally different person in front of your friends, in front of your family, in front of your parents. You don't know how to navigate that world. You can say up one side and down the other that I would have fucking stabbed Joffrey myself right then. Cool. Then you are responsible for regicide. You're going to be killed. You can't, that's ridiculous. But then moving on to the thing that you and I always say is all of the people who hate Sansa fucking love Arya. And if I'm being honest, and this is an unpopular opinion, I think Arya is pretty boring. Like 90% of the time. I think she's super boring. I swear to Christ, if she's the one who kills Cersei, I will consider this show null and void.
Don't take my point. That's mine, because you're always the one prepping me for that. And
it's going to happen, but you and me both.
Furious.
Yeah.
The Cersei's gonna die. I've made my peace with that. And at this point, she has hard earned that fate.
Yes, no, for sure.
But I will only be happy if it's Jaime who kills her. I won't even accept Tyrion.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, I would be fine if it were... my ideal is for it to be Jaime, but I would be fine if it were Tyrion or Sansa.
I don't think it's going to be Sansa.
Or even like a third party that we would have never thought it would be.
No, I want it to be... It has to be Jaime. They came into this world together, and they're going to go out of it together. It's got to be a murder-suicide. That's just...
I mean, I'd be delighted, but I really don't think so. But to the point I was actually going to make was that what we've always said from the moment that they are separated after, or I guess just before Ned is executed, literally neither one of them could have survived in the other's position. However, Arya is less equipped to survive in Sansa's position than Sansa would have been to survive in Arya's position. Sansa could have... Hypothetically, she could have done it. Arya wouldn't have been able to keep her little trap shut long enough to live 3 weeks out.
There is a scene in season one, where Sansa has to navigate 4 of the most heavy hitters in the world. She's sitting at a table with Cersei, Littlefinger, Varys, and Grand Maester Pycelle on the other side. And she has to be able to navigate the 4 of them.
Right.
And she has to be able to maneuver and play within them. And it's so fascinating. And one of my favorite scenes for both of these actors, it's Sansa and Tyrion. It's in season 2, the Battle of Blackwater Bay. And it's when Tyrion, because he always kind of liked Sansa.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's giving a speech or something like that. Or maybe she's giving, there's a public scene, and then as it's like ending, she basically is like saying goodbye to Joffrey, and she's saying all the things that she needs to say.
Oh yeah, like I wish for your swift return and blah, 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 yeah.
And so then Tyrion steps up to her after Joffrey has left.
I will pray for your safe return, my lord.
Will you?
Just as I prayed for the kings.
And she just turns and walks away, and this smile just creeps across his face, because that was such a slap in the face.
I mean, he literally is like, touche, well done, Sansa.
It was the facial expression of, you may survive this yet. Like,
yeah, no, 100%. And that is the crux of it for me, because, and again, I'm being general. I know that there are men in the world who are great and fine. The men who like Arya like her because she is strong like a man. And
because she's a badass.
Because she's a badass and she kills people and she has a sword.
Defies her femininity.
Exactly. They despise Sansa because she uses her feminine power to get ahead of the men.
Because
and that's something they can't grasp.
One of the points I always bring out is Sansa contemplates murdering Joffrey in season 1.
Oh, yeah.
They're standing on the ledge, the balcony.
Looking at Ned's head on a pike.
And she actually considers shoving him off the balcony. And how that's not the moment that so many people were like, okay, this is salvageable.
It's
you know what I mean?
Because she didn't. Arya would have done it and been murdered herself. And it's like, but that's the problem. She can't be murdered. She's trying to get home. She's trying to save the rest of her family. Can't you understand that that's the stronger move in this position? We are playing chess. We're not playing Russian roulette. Like, it's a whole different thing. And Sansa's good at chess, and Arya's good at Russian roulette, but Sansa could pick up Russian roulette, and Arya could not pick up chess. That's I think, the metaphor I'm going with.
I also just have to mention probably one of my favorite scenes, easily. I hate when people ask, we did a Q&A episode a few weeks ago, and one of the questions was, what's your favorite scene from a movie or TV show? And I actually came up with a good idea, but I just wish that I was more on the spot with things, because one of my favorite scenes in television history is during the Battle of Blackwater Bay. Yeah. And it's when Cersei and when Cersei's basically getting drunk in the safe room with Sansa.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it's like, as awful as Cersei is, and I mean, I guess Cersei's relationship was there was gray with Sansa. Yeah. In a way that her relationship with Marjorie was negative the entire time.
Sure, yes.
Because I was like, Cersei's actually mentoring Sansa in this scene. However,
she was for a while.
Helpful or destructive or whatever, you say what you will about it. But Cersei is like, let me teach you a few things, little dove. Right. You know, like, that was your favorite line when Sansa asked what the purpose of the guards were.
Oh, yeah.
And Cersei's just like, let me tell you something. She was like, if they break through the threshold and get into this castle, we're all in for a little bit of a rape.
We're all in for a bit of a rape. And and she was like, I'd rather be drunk. And I just like, it's horrifying to contemplate, but like, it's moments like that I think are make the best case for Cersei because she is very clearly wise beyond her station. You know, she's smarter than she's given credit for. She was a trophy wife for Robert, and it's sort of like, it's nice to see her be smart.
I will admit that it pains me to say this, but she is not as smart as she thinks she is.
No, she's not, but she's smarter than she should be.
Yes.
She's smarter than she should be, and she's smarter than, well, no, that contradicts, but she's definitely smarter than she should be, and it is to her detriment almost every time. Because you're right, she's not as smart as she could be.
Yeah, and some of my favorite scenes are with Cersei and Tyrion, and especially Lena and Peter, and I think that's where their personal friendship comes out a lot.
Yeah.
Because there are several scenes where she says something about, like, I know you think I'm stupid or something, and he's like, no, actually, I think you're very smart. It terrifies me, and it was something to that effect. And there are just several scenes where these two people that have hated each other their whole lives, and I cannot remember, it was in 2 or 3, but there is a scene where she is at the end of her rope and not so much that she needs comforting, but it's like she is vulnerable and he is there and he feels the compulsion to console her, but wouldn't even know how.
Right.
So they're just sort of staring at each other with a what do we do now?
Yeah.
In a way that, like, Tyrion actually has a very good relationship with Jaime.
Yeah, they really, because that's the thing. You said they hate each other, and it's not a two-way street, really. Like, Cersei hates him because when he was born, their mother died. But he's never hated Cersei in that same way. He keeps her at an arm's length because she hates him. But Jaime doesn't blame him the way that Cersei does for their mother's death. And so he and Jaime have always kind of gotten along. And I think the relationship between Jaime and Tyrion is one of the better ones on the show when they get material together. Which is not, it's not often, but
they have had a fair amount.
Yeah.
Do you remember the scene with Oberyn Martell where he was talking to Tyrion in the cell? And he was like, we've met before. And Tyrion was like, I don't remember. And he's like, you wouldn't, you were a baby. But Oberyn was like, I was prepared to see this monster. He was like, and then when I met you, I was so disappointed because you were just a baby.
Right.
Because that is another layer, and this is absolutely not in defense of Cersei, but it's like, this goes back to the medieval milieu where it's like, Tyrion is a little person. They call him an imp.
And a dwarf, I mean.
Yeah, there you go, a dwarf. That's, I guess, the term. But, you know, that's something that in this time period was quite I mean, it is even now, but, you know, it was quite an affliction. Like, Tywin was well within his rights to, you know, cast the baby out.
Yeah.
And he contemplated doing it. And I just said Tywin. I actually love Tywin. I feel like Tywin might be my favorite character. As with anything, I have like 5 favorite characters.
Sure,
but
yeah.
I didn't know his name for like the first 2 seasons, so I just called him Daddy Lannister. It's
Which
Charles
is
Dance, right?
Accurate AF, yeah.
He is the patriarch. He is the Father Lannister, and he was keeping the entire world together through his sheer force of will alone. It was so good. The way...
Yeah, when you introduce a character field dressing a deer on the battlefield, I feel like you're making a statement.
That was a real deer.
Not a real deer. Oh, it was? Oh, I thought you were asking.
No, that was real deer.
Shit.
Charles just did it. They had like 5 of them.
Hilarious.
And he just did it. Like,
well, he's like a crusty British man. He's probably done that so many times.
Yeah.
He's probably got a hunting estate.
Yeah. And just the way that he commands the power, and it's just, and the way he maneuvers through all of them, through Jaime, through Tyrion, through Cersei, and even Joffrey, because it's like he has to play this game with Joffrey because he has to pretend that Joffrey is in control.
Right.
It's fascinating to watch. And then he does get to a point where he can send Joffrey to bed without supper, which is great, but he had to get to that point first. we're doing the thing where I'm like, we just talked about Joffrey. I just have to mention, in case anybody listening to this doesn't know, but Joffrey is played by an actor by the name of Jack Gleason, who is apparently the most incredible person. He's the nicest guy. He's the sweetest guy. He's so much fun. Everybody talked about how incredible he was.
He does like puppet shows for charity.
Yeah, they were so sad to lose him, and this show really did a number on him because he is so hated.
Yeah.
That he's like sort of just retired from acting because he can't really, like, what would he do?
Which is such a shame because I thought he was actually very good. I mean, Joffrey is a horrendous person, but like Jack did such a good job being him, especially knowing that he's such a nice person in real life. I just like, I hope that he comes back to acting at some point because I think it's kind of a waste of talent.
I remember there was a meme and it was like, you know, Darth Vader and just sort of like Maleficent. And it was like, some people love these bad guys. Some people hate these bad guys. But it was like everybody. And I mean, everybody loathes Joffrey. Like there's not a single.
I saw a lot of stuff when he was still on the show comparing him to Dolores Umbridge. Because they're both so loathsome. And in very similar ways where they're like, they are, I mean, he's a little more chaotic, but they are like lawful evil.
Well, there was a thing, actually, there was an alignment chart I saw where Tywin Lannister was lawful evil, Cersei was neutral evil, and Joffrey was chaotic evil.
Yeah, I mean, that works too, for sure.
So, I guess jumping around, I feel like we were heading in a direction, and I don't remember what it was. I guess we were talking about Tyrion, and I was saying, like, not in anybody's defense, but that him being
a dwarf.
The imp certainly plays a role. In a weird way, this is an ensemble. It has had, I would say 3 leads, though. 4. I would call this, right here and now, I would call this, well, I don't know about right here and now, but I would call this Peter Dinklage's show.
I was going to say, right here and now, it is Kit Harington's show. Kit and Emilia Clarke. But, yeah, I mean...
in the middle there, it was Peter Dinklage's show.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because I would say there is the Sean Bean era, and then there is like the Lena Headey and Peter Dinklage era, and then it was like just Peter Dinklage for a minute, and now it's kind of filtered down into the second generation where it's Amelia and Sophie and Kit.
And I mean, he's won 2 Emmys, and that is a feat to win not only 1 but 2 awards in a fantasy show, you know.
Yeah, for acting, yeah. Yeah,
because we often talk about the genre curse. Yep. But again, it had to trick the audience into it.
Yeah.
Because, again, to quote Price Peterson, it started off as like medieval times, and now it's just full-blown Dungeons and Dragons. Like
100%, yeah.
There's giants and like
literally
children
Dungeons
of the forest.
In Dragon, damn it, Dragons in Dungeons. Damn it. That was so close.
So we mentioned Jon and Daenerys. Do we want to talk about them at all? Sure. I can start with Jon.
Okay.
I had next to no feelings about Jon. Or Kit Harington, for that matter. Just did nothing. Just nothing for me.
Okay.
I was a Rob guy.
Yeah, I know. I don't totally get it. I mean, I get Richard Madden. I don't totally get Rob.
He was handsome in the Dreamboat, and it just he is this the story likes to lean into and then subvert the genre, and frankly, it goes full fairy tale several times. Like, and so Rob is the fairy tale prince. He is the fairy tale hero. He is the rightful one, and so we should have seen it coming. What happened with Rob? There was another meme that I loved so much, and it was some dude took a picture of himself. And he was wearing a shirt that just said King Rob, and he was wearing like a crown, and he had like a pennant that was like Rob for King or something. And he was like, had to work last night, but thankfully I managed to avoid spoilers. Now to sit down and watch Rob finally take the throne.
Nice.
Because I didn't know. We reached a point where I thought I liked spoilers at a point, and what I was responding to was I liked getting gossip.
Yeah.
I liked information. So you were telling me everything in the books. And it was shortly after that I found out that I actually hate spoilers. And so I knew that Kat died at a wedding, but that was pretty much it. And so when that episode, the notorious episode, happened,
The Reigns of Castamere.
yeah, I kind of got there before, and I was like, oh, this is when Kat dies. And I was like, so when everything kind of happened, I was just sort of like meh in a way that was life-changing for so many people. Oh, Rob, he's so pretty and so stupid.
Yeah.
So back to John. I don't know. I have come around. I do like him. I just find him and Kit boring. I just find that they're just so generic, and he's absolutely good looking. And revisiting the show gave me some insights and some stuff that I kind of missed the first time. Whereas, like, I had kind of forgotten that John was a little bit of a dick in the beginning.
Well, I mean, what do you mean?
Like when he got to the Night's Watch.
Oh, okay.
He was kind of mean to the other guys.
No,
yeah, he was.
They're mean to him.
No, they were mean to the other guy. He was basically, he spent his entire life. David and DB said as much, which is another issue we were having.
Okay,
is they were
did they say it in the after
Yes,
thing?
they
But
said
they
it in
were
the
like
after thing.
didn't explain it with words in the show.
There were a handful of things when we were watching these inside the episodes where they would explain the significance of a scene, and you were like, that would have been
nice.
great if it were in the episode.
Yeah.
But that was not made clear.
It's like you can tell just by the exchange of looks, and I'm like, that looks like two characters looking at each other. I don't know how I was supposed to get an entire backstory from it. Okay, here is the thing in the books. Basically, Ned went off to war and left a pregnant Catelyn behind. When he came back from war, he had another baby. So, meaning he fucked around the minute he was gone, essentially, and came back with this baby that he said, this is my baby. You need to raise it as our baby. So, John and Rob are the same age, and so Catelyn was always mean to John because he was like a product of infidelity, and he's not the true heir or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So then, but he still got raised alongside them as a lord's son. So he had all this training and stuff, and then in the books, when he does go to the Night Watch and he joins, they treat him poorly because they think he's highfalutin. And he's not a dick to them. He just doesn't know how to not be who he is.
Well, the way they explain, I mean, it was virtually that, but the way they explain it is that John spent his whole life sort of feeling like a victim, and then he gets into this situation and realizes that he's actually very entitled, and that he actually was raised like a lord, even though some aspects of his life sucked by comparison to the rest of, his family.
I mean,
but then when you consider the other boys that are at the wall, he was extremely privileged.
No, totally. He was extremely privileged.
So that made me think about him differently.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
I just sort of, I came around more. And I mean, I hate to say this because it is as superficial as can be, but the main turning point for me with coming around on him was him dying and then coming back from the dead naked.
All right,
and then
fair enough.
I was suddenly into it. He's got
man.
a tiny little waist. And
Yeah.
like,
We've all
I'm
got
into
something.
that. So, I mean, I like his moppy hair that gets in his face, but I don't know. That's not what I'm watching the show for. The Wall, like that was never what I was interested in. We actually have not controversial takes, but I was going to say we're both pretty tepid on Daenerys in a way that most people are like.
I mean, I like Daenerys. Okay, I liked Daenerys a lot in seasons 1 and 2, and I like Daenerys a lot now. In the middle, when she is in Meereen for 1,000 years and isn't adjusting to their customs and ways at all, I find Daenerys extremely tedious. When she's just literally barging in, balls to the wall, and she's like, you're free! Figure it out! That's not how ending slavery works. You have to keep going.
Well,
you have to, do more.
It took
took
a while.
her fucking long enough. So, that's the Daenerys that I'm not a huge fan of. I think she rushed into a lot of things in a way that if she had actually listened to her counsel a little bit more, she wouldn't have made some mistakes that she made. But overall, I think Daenerys is a great character, and since it is literally coming down to her and Jon, there's not much else, we can do. But no, and I mean, I think Emilia Clarke does great work with it for the most part, when she, isn't interminably stuck in Meereen. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have like problems with Daenerys. She's definitely not my favorite character.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also don't think she's quite as complex.
Right.
We tend to like slightly more, and not ambiguous, but just characters where there's layers.
Yeah.
Which actually could bring us to your favorite character.
Is it time to talk about Lord Baelish?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to paint a little picture real quick. When I was growing up, I think I've talked about my Aunt Megan before. She is 5 years older than me. And so I watched a handful of things that were above my pay grade when I was a little too young. One of them is a movie with Minnie Driver and Chris O'Donnell and Saffron Burrows called Circle of Friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's set in Ireland. It's very cute. I do want to cover it at some point on this show. I know it's not your jam, but I think you'll still like it.
I want to know solely because for over 10 years, that was the book that was on my grandma's nightstand.
Oh, I don't know if it's the same, but
what it was.
it might be the same. I'm not sure if it was based on a book, but it might be the same. Regardless, that is how long I have inadvertently known who Aidan Gillen is, because he is a secondary character's boyfriend in the movie. And I have always thought he was very cute. I think he's super good looking. I think Littlefinger's goatee really suits his face. So that is my introduction to Aidan Gillen. So
do you want to know my introduction to Aidan Gillen?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. It is 2000.
Okay.
HBO's Real Sex 30
is
on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. They are covering a English show called Queer as Folk.
Yeah, that's right.
In which he is eating Charlie Hunnam's ass.
That's right. He does
do that.
And
that is how I found out about several things.
Cool. Cool. Yours is better than mine, I think.
Because remember when King Arthur came out?
Yeah.
And Jacob was like, the one thing that I feel like the movie was lacking was at no point did, and I forget his character's name, but he was like, at no point did the character Aidan Gillen eat King Arthur's ass.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my god, that's what I put together, that's who it was. But
yeah. So I was already predisposed to like him. In the second place, in the early goings of this show, he owns multiple brothels, which is just a fun character trait. In the third place, he has a really, I don't know if there's a name for it, so I'm just going to call it an Electra complex by default, but he has a weird complex with Catelyn and Sansa in a way that I find deliciously intriguing.
Well, and this is where you're different than most people, because most people find it repulsive, but...
No, I love it. I think it's so fascinating. I believe that he loved Sansa. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that he actually, for real, loved her and would have married her if he were able. Well, he flat
out says that she's some weird wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
Because he was in love with Kat, and that, of course, never happened. And then he says in the show that she's like her mother, only prettier.
Yeah.
But she's also this weird combination of, like, a daughter to him, like... Yeah,
it's fucked up, but I love it. It's so interesting. And so and then just, he's so conniving, and he's such an interesting character. He was absolutely, from start to finish, the character that I found most interesting every time he was on screen. I, didn't waver in my interest in Littlefinger. I was captivated by him every single time. And I think such a huge part of that was Aidan's performance. Because a lot of it's on the page, but that was one of the earliest scenes where book readers realized the show was going to be so different, was he has a scene with Varys. Neither one of them are ever point of view characters in any of the books. And so that was the moment where I was like, oh, they're really fleshing these characters out in a way. And so, yeah, he is definitely 100% from start to finish the character that I found the most consistently intriguing, I want to say. So when we were watching the little behind the scenes things and we got to Marjorie's demise, I was like, I've never been more furious at this show. And you were like, really? And I was
a little surprised by that.
I was like, I couldn't believe they killed her. I wasn't done with her. I didn't think we were done with her.
I wasn't either, and that sort of got swallowed up for me. There was a lot of things happening, and I realize that I'm hijacking the conversation, but that was a weekend for us. That was the weekend of the Pulse attack.
Yes, that's right.
So I came from the memorial. There was a Sunday memorial, and I got home in time to watch Game of Thrones, and it was one of the most that episode is one of the most interesting and exciting episodes that really the show aired to date. And so in a weird way, I just sort of blew over. I don't have issue with the fact that they killed Marjorie, and the thing that I take issue with is that her death wasn't unique. That she was like but one of 1,000. I felt like she had earned something. But I will say that of the ways to go out, it was a spectacular way.
A literal blaze of glory.
She did figure it out.
Yeah.
I was very, very sad because I always, just because of being gay, I connected Dolores. And you've told me that that he's different in the show than he is in the books. In the show, he's kind of like a Ponzi idiot.
Yes.
And I just felt for him. Because they were basically gay conversion therapying him.
Yeah, the Sparrows.
And to have to lose him and Marjorie the way that they did, it was rough to think about now. And but as a certified Cersei stan, I was just through the moon, through the roof, over the moon.
I get that, but that is well into her descent into madness. By that point,
it's flavor.
Well, it's not, but
yeah. So back to.
But if we're getting back to Littlefinger, when we were watching the little end things, I said that about Marjorie's scene, and then we got to when Littlefinger is killed, and it was the last episode of last season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was like, just kidding. This is the angriest I ever was. Here's the thing, because in my opinion, he didn't in that moment, he hadn't done anything right then that was worthy of dying.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the thing for me where I don't feel it was earned in that moment. And despite having married her to Ramsay, which, how could he have...
You have a hard time with that one.
Well, I don't like that he married her to him, but what?
I was going to say, I feel like I said you have a hard time with that one, and actually I meant the opposite. I feel like you're not mad enough at him for that.
I'm mad at him for it, but... Was it common knowledge that Ramsay was a psychopath?
I think so. To Littlefinger? I think so.
Okay. Fair enough.
Because he was like, I knew you'd survive it. And that's when she tells him off, where she was like, I'm hurt in places you can't see.
Sure. And that scene is excellent and such a great showcase for Sophie Turner. And again, I'm not trying to justify his behavior. He's sort of horrific the whole time.
To the killing of him, it cannot be understated, or overstated rather. It cannot be overstated how stupid of a plot his death was serving.
Yes. Yeah.
Which was the pointless feud between Sansa and Arya that nobody wanted, that benefited nothing, and was all a deliberate misdirect for the audience.
Yeah.
Characters were behaving irrationally in rooms together with just the two of them.
Yeah.
Just to confuse the audience.
And the biggest issue for me is that having known Littlefinger since episode 1 and having found out and learned and known all this stuff about him and how good he is at scheming and how good he is at surviving and how good he is at making himself useful to people, I think it was disingenuous to not have him last until the final season.
Okay.
I think if they were going to kill him, I would have preferred that it happened in episode 1 of season 8, and I would have enjoyed if Jon were there.
Why?
I think it would have brought some temperance to the situation.
Okay.
In a way that, it's not that I think that Sansa and Arya were acting rashly, but I think it would have taken some more time, and I think I really don't like that Arya did it.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes me angry. I don't love Arya as Sansa's executioner. I don't love the way that it fed into the similarly psychopathic nature of Arya at this point. I just don't love it. I didn't love the way it happened, and I think it should have happened between 1 and 4 episodes later.
Mm-hmm. I get that. And so like with Marjorie, our issues aren't that they died. We just didn't love the way in which it was executed, for lack of a better word.
And I understand that I am in the minority, but unpopular opinion, I was just so into the psychosexual nature of his relationship with Sansa. I thought that could have used just a scotch more exploring.
Mm-hmm. As I remember, you had sort of feelings about Kat.
Yes.
She was never your favorite.
Yeah, she's not my favorite. She wasn't my favorite in the books either, because she's one of the point of view characters in the early going. I didn't like her because she was really mean to Jon, and I didn't think there was any excuse for that after, and they aged them up quite a bit for the show, but regardless.
You did tell me that. That always... Because isn't Daenerys supposed to be like 14?
She's like 13.
Mm-hmm.
But Jon and Robb are 14, and the phrase they use in the book all the time is, "I'm a man grown." And I'm like, no, you're fucking not. But I mean, I know medieval stuff is different, but...
Well, because they talk about with Sansa, they talk about her, what is it, like her first blood or something?
Yeah, so if I'm remembering right, I think Sansa was like 11 or 12, and Arya was like 9 or 10. And then Bran and Rickon, or maybe I was a little bit wrong. Maybe she was 13. Regardless, they aged them all up like between 3 and 4 years.
Understandably so.
Understandably so, for sure. But yeah, I never really did love Kat. I always thought she was too doting on Robb. I just kind of found her chapters a little bit boring whenever I was reading them. And she is the only window we ever get into Robb in the books. And then I really like Michelle Fairley.
That makes sense with your issue, because anytime we talked about Robb, you would be like, meh. Yeah. And I was like, what can you mean, meh? Like, I get it now.
Because I think that Richard Madden is very attractive, but like, Robb is like an idiot. He's like real stupid. He makes real bad decisions at every turn. Like, he spurns all kinds of people, and then he marries this fucking like minor lord's nurse daughter. And he just thinks everything's gonna be okay because he spurned the phrase. I'm just like, you're kind of an idiot, bro.
All those stabbings were on you.
I mean, I was very near the point of quitting this show after the Red Wedding. Specifically because, what was her name? Jane. Well, in the book it's Jane,
Talisa.
But whatever. She's not there when the Red Wedding happens. She's back at River Run. They leave her at River Run and they go to the twins alone, Robb and Kat. I don't understand why they would have changed that story in such a way that Robb's new pregnant wife is there to get stabbed directly in the uterus, except for shock value. And I was at like Walking Dead levels of furious when that happened. There is literally no excuse for that. It's only to be shocking. It's disgusting. It's so rude. And it just is like part of this show's ongoing problem with how they treat their female characters, especially in like a sexual context.
It's not all the time, and it's not it's not constant, but the show seems to, and then I think this is what you meant in the beginning. Let me mansplain this point back to you, Kristen.
Thank God a penis is here to tell me what I said wrong.
I didn't mean to say, you said something about how it was from a male gaze, and at first I started to argue you, but then I like understood what you meant, and I think you meant specifically with this, where it has a very, 30, 40 something male understanding of power and strength and stuff. And so it feels like the way,
well, and femininity.
Yes. It feels like the way to show you that a character is strong, a female character is strong, is to put her through a physical ordeal. And so they have a tendency to be like, well, if we need to either sympathize a female character or strengthen a female character, she's in for a bit of a rape. And
exactly,
it's like, we understand what a triggering topic rape is. And we even think that there are responsible and good ways to explore it. You know, an example of a show that has done an incredible job with a rape storyline is The Magicians.
Yeah.
But too frequently we feel like it was used in an attempt, because I mean they did it to Cersei, they did it to Sansa, they did it to I mean there's others, I'm blanking.
Well, Roz.
I mean, oh God.
The problem for me is that, again, it's just like with having Talisa at the Red Wedding. All of those things are different than the books. They changed every single one of those things in order to put a female character that we have come to love in a position where she is sexually abused.
Or in
there
Cersei's,
is sexual violence
it's like
done
it's like
to
that's
her.
the only way that they can think to humanize her.
Right, and in that scene specifically, when Jaime comes back and Joffrey is dead and they have sex right next to his body in the sept, that scene is very specifically, like, gentle and loving in the book. Like, they are finding solace in one another. And instead, the whole time in the show, she's saying, no, 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 Jaime, don't. And he fucking rapes her. And it's insanity to me. And then again, with Sansa and Ramsay Bolton, in that part of the book, Sansa is elsewhere. I think Sansa's still at the Vale with Littlefinger when that happens. When Ramsay
we have
gets
no
married,
way of knowing, because the next book is not out. For all we know, that could happen.
No. They send Sansa's little friend Jane.
Okay.
From early in the books, they send her pretending to be Sansa. She's like a Sansa stand-in.
Because for a hot minute, you thought that's what they were going to do with Roz.
Yeah, because Sansa's stand-in, or Sansa's little friend Jane, is still at King's Landing, and they find her and dye her hair red and send her up there as Sansa.
You telling me that, and I remember like you laughing, telling me, and me laughing, because it was when you were telling me stuff about the show, and you were like, the Lannisters just pretend to have Sansa?
Yeah.
And you were like, they take some girl, and we're like, this is her, you just don't remember what she looks like.
Well,
and
Ramsay's
I was like,
never met
so
her.
Funny. Well,
Yeah.
I know, but...
But that's what they do. They just are like, here you go, it's totally fine. And so it's like they specifically changed so many things specifically in order to do sexual violence to female characters that we have come to love in one way or another. And I find that
and the argument,
repugnant.
Of course, is that there is a certain type of person who, even whether they, know it's wrong or right, or whether they know it's wrong or would ever act on this or whatever, they do still get off on it.
Yeah.
Because I saw a meme where it was like, I hate all the rape in Game of Thrones. And a person was like, well, it's accurate to the time period. It's necessary to tell this type of story. And the person said, yeah, so is shitting in the streets due to dysentery. And the person goes, no, nobody wants to watch that.
Yeah. And again, I wouldn't, it would be, I would be fine. I would accept all of them as legitimate narrative storytelling if we, A, dealt with the consequences to the women, or B, if any of the stories were told from the, like, active position of the female characters.
Mm-hmm.
But it's how I said it at the beginning. It's all from this deeply male perspective, where it's like, that's what makes them strong. It's not about the after effects. And the one they've done the most after work with is Sansa. But something tells me Sophie had something to say about that.
Mm-hmm. There's a part of me that thinks that Sansa, on some level, was aware that this was going to happen, and it was something that she went through.
Well, I mean, she had no way out.
Yeah, but it's something that she sort of... You're right. I'm not trying to take it away. I'm not trying to say that it wasn't. But I think there was a part of her that was like, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to, like, handle this.
Yeah,
like,
I believe that for sure.
It didn't turn on her in the moment the way that, you know, so many... And I guess it's all rape, so I strike that. I don't want to...
No. I definitely get what you mean, though. I think that she probably was, you know, she was like, this is going to happen, but I can come out the other side. And it doesn't make it better for her, and it doesn't make it different, but I definitely agree. I don't think that was sprung on her at the last minute. I think she knew going in. But again, she was also tied by circumstance. She couldn't leave. The only way she could have left is honestly if she had been like, JK, Littlefinger, I'll marry you. And, you know, she didn't want to do that. So that's just still a different kind of rape. She still doesn't want it.
I had a few more characters that I wrote down, some of which, like, I mean, I was going to talk about Oberyn Martell, R.I.P., his bisexual heart. We didn't get a lot of that male bisexuality, but...
Yeah, I did also...
appreciated nonetheless.
You mentioned his one scene with Tyrion, but I also did want to talk about his one scene with Cersei. That was so great.
Oh my God.
Because they, like, take her daughter Myrcella to be married to his son or his nephew, Tristan. And, you know, she's like, I'm giving you my only daughter, and I'm, like, terrified. And he's like, we don't hurt little girls in Dorne.
You know that famous Dornish saying, we hurt little girls whenever we get pissed?
And so
You'll rue the day you did this?
Yeah, he was like, we don't hurt little girls in Dorne. And she said, all around the world, they hurt little girls. And I just, like, that is such a powerful scene. And this show is what introduced me to Pedro Pascal. And that was a lovely introduction, so.
We were livid about that Myrcella storyline.
It was horrible. It was so stupid. Why even bring her back up?
Yeah, it fucking Ilaria Sand. And, like, I remember it was an Entertainment Weekly recap where the person was like, we then cut to Myrcella and Tristan, who were in a Disney fairy tale. It was like, they are happy, they are in love, they are an appropriate couple, so of course everyone is trying to separate them.
Yeah.
Like,
they're age appropriate, they're not related in any capacity.
Like, it was just this dreamy, and I mean, and then she has that scene with Jaime. We've mentioned Jaime, but unfortunately we didn't pick into him.
We will pick into him in season 8 for sure.
Yeah. But she has that scene with him where she's basically like, I know you're my father and that's okay. I'm happy. And she was the second actress to play
Myrcella, yeah.
Her name was Nell Tiger Free, and I was just gonna mention because Tommen, what did they keep saying?
Tommen?
In the behind-the-scenes stuff.
D.B. Weiss cannot say a single character's name right.
It was a combination of both of them. It was mostly D.B. Weiss, but Damon was doing it too, where they were saying all of their names so strangely, because they were calling her Cersei, and Sansa.
But it was even more. It was I can't, it's like there was like 7 H's in there. It was like Sansa.
And like... every Tommen and every single one, he said Missandei, and it took both of us all the way. Yeah, you didn't even register it. You had no idea,
and you were like, "What the fuck was that?" And I was like, "Who?"
He said Missandei. Missandei.
I just did God. George R. R. Martin like never sit down and be like, "This is how you say my characters' names"?
Well, and that's the thing where I was like,
"Do they not watch the show?"
I was like, "This has been 10 years of their lives. They have to have been in meetings with like." Producers and writers and stuff, and it had to have been like a battle of wills, where they're all so pointedly pronouncing it the one way,
right?
Like their own way, and they're like, "I will win this war."
Right?
Like,
I couldn't handle it. Every time he said Sansa, I was like, "No," because okay, the British people on the show say Sansa, and that's fine, but there's not 3 H's and a Z in there. It was like the word stanza. No, not even that. That's too stanza.
Yeah. I will say that the last 2 that I really sort of wrote down that we haven't just even mentioned, and they're apparently important, is Theon and Yara Greyjoy.
Oh, do you have a lot to say about them?
I do not have a lot to say, but I felt like something needed to be said because the show insists that they are characters.
Yeah.
I hated Theon the entire time I was watching the show, and I have a different appreciation for him now. I don't really know why. maybe just them explaining some of the behind the scenes stuff, I have a slightly different appreciation. George R. R. Martin, man, he's a talented man. The thing that we always say about him, and we say it talking about other shows, but he has a way of surprising you with the single most obvious outcome of something. But
which,
he also,
in my opinion, is the mark of an excellent storyteller.
Oh, absolutely. But he also has a way, and I love this about him. I love that he is in control of this world, he and he alone, and we are, but, we are at his mercy.
Sure.
And I love that he gives us what he gives us. So if somebody's on the show, we're dealing with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if there's a character,
100%.
we're dealing with it. And so I've come around. I actually flat out like Yara now in a way that I actively hated her when we were introduced to her.
I will admit to really being tepid on everybody from the Iron Islands, mostly because I think I've mentioned it in person before. Book 4 is equal parts excellent and terrible because the parts that are not set in the Iron Islands are fabulous. The parts that are set in the Iron Islands take for fucking ever, and it feels like it's over half the book, even though husband Will has proved me wrong. It's only like maybe a quarter of the book is set there, but the plot absolutely grinds to a halt every time we get back to the Iron Islands and the Greyjoys. It is so fucking boring. I cannot even explain the whole Kingsmoot nonsense. And then there's like 100,000 Greyjoys that all have names that are a variation on Euron. I literally couldn't handle it. It was at points my favorite and least favorite book because it has the purple wedding in it. So it has that string of chapters that go Sansa, Tyrion, Sansa, Tyrion, Sansa, Tyrion. But it also has all of these fucking Yara and Theon chapters, and I literally couldn't be fucked with them. It was so awful. So I have like a predisposition not to give a shit. So I like Alfie Allen and I like the girl that plays Yara, and I think they're both doing what they're supposed to, but at the same time I'm like, like, how important are you really?
And I mean, this actually even goes to the whole Reek thing goes to your whole point about the male gaze for the whole thing, because they are so proud of that, the way they talk about that whole plot line about how they're gonna... Yes!
I missed that. That's horrible.
that because they were trying to make us empathize with Theon, and so like he doesn't know why this is happening to him, so they're keeping the audience deliberately in the dark too. And it was like,
but we do know why it's happening.
No, we don't. It's not revealed who Ramsay is until like the end of that season.
Oh, okay. I get it.
Knew, but it's done. I think you told me, but it was like,
I actually thought you meant in like a grander sense, and I was like, he's absolutely being punished for his crimes against the Starks.
Well, I mean, cosmically, yeah, but it's like where that's a brilliant way of thinking to keep the audience in the character's position. Where they misstepped, in my humble opinion, is that people don't enjoy being tortured.
People don't enjoy watching a man have his penis cut off and then a dude eating a sausage right in front of him.
Peeling the skin off his fingers. Yeah, it just like... So that's where I think that was a colossal misstep. And I mean, I guess it is sort of fascinating now, having come through the other side of it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, in that instance, I think Alfie Allen has done some of the more incredible work on this show.
He's also the sole male cast member that'll sling his dong around, so credit there, but
he doesn't have one anymore, so...
Yeah, I know. It was impressive, too, because we've seen it. Famously, Lily Allen's brother, by the way. He's the one who replaced Daniel Radcliffe on stage with Equus.
Equus, yeah.
I think he's great. It just, it's... I like where it's at now. And in particular, again, where we were enjoying watching the inside the episodes, how they were sort of explaining Yara, kind of giving him that pep talk where she's making him drink the beer. And it's like, they don't have a concept of therapy. And even if they did, these people are Vikings. Like, what would they do?
Yeah, exactly.
So that was very good. That was very interesting. So they were the last two that, because they're both still alive, I felt like we needed to address.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the dragons. They're fucking amazing. It's incredible. We have 2 left. We lost 1. Although he's still alive.
He's still kicking. He's just an ice dragon.
He's an ice dragon. He's undead, as Sheila Hammond would say.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of... I think I mentioned it in another episode. I don't remember what we were talking about, but we were talking about special effects on television. And I was like, yeah, it's gotten to a point where, like...
Those are real dragons.
Those are real. I just don't believe a computer did that. Those are somewhere on, like, the HBO soundstage. They just exist. And so I agree with you. I think they are definitely, like, marvels of computer generation,
Modern,
for sure.
Yeah. Do we need to really set up where we are now, or it doesn't really matter? I mean, I didn't say...
I think we could do a little quick one.
Yeah, I didn't say Cersei's queen.
By default.
Yeah, but as we were watching that, don't take this away from me. As we were watching that episode and that scene, before we got to there, we were towards the end of the episode, and I said, so wait, who is king now? Mm-hmm. And you said, I don't know. And you said it would revert. You said it would revert to somebody. And you said, no, maybe Jaime. It would be Jaime. And I was like, well, even if it was Jaime, I was like, he's not there. I was like, so could that possibly mean? And then the camera like smash cut to Cersei walking down the aisle.
I remember that because I thought you were asking me in like in a literal like lineage general sense. And because Jon is king.
No?
Yes.
How?
He is the actual direct Targaryen descendant. Jon is 100% king.
Yeah, but they don't know that.
No, they don't know that. So, like, out of the people who know what's going on in King's Landing, yes, Cersei is queen.
And so when we were having that conversation, because that's where my mind went, I was like, so is she actually queen now? And it cut to it. And there's a picture of it. I can put it on the Instagram. I stood up. I kicked. And I flailed my hands around in the air, and then I fell to the ground. My knees gave out underneath me, and there's like a picture of me clutching the couch to keep from falling off the earth. Mm-hmm. Because I was so excited to see her with her crown and take the throne. And so I was like, from then on, I'm happy. I was like, that's all I've ever wanted was for her to sit on the Iron Throne with a crown. And she has like a pretty snowflake crown that I really wanted to get, but it's $200 and I just cannot afford any more $200 hobbies.
So look, here's the thing. If any enterprising fan out there wants to buy us a present, you can Venmo us the money.
Oh my god. So yeah. So we're in a position where Daenerys is in Westeros. Mm-hmm. And we didn't even fucking mention Lady Olenna. I mean, we mentioned her, but Dame Diana Rigg.
The fucking
her scenes with Tywin, those scenes they were exciting like any sword fight. Like,
oh yeah. Her scenes with Tywin, she had a couple scenes with Cersei, I think all of her scenes with Marjorie, and then that final scene with Jaime was like chef's kiss amazing, like the cherry on top of that season.
They were like, this is his big moment, and she steals it out from under him.
She wins, and she dies, but she still wins the battle. It's wild and so amazing. She was just 100% fabulous the whole time.
Oh man, yeah, I don't know. I'm like. So yeah, when Jon and Daenerys have hooked up, which I am actually kind of glad that I mean, I'm so blasé about Jaime and Cersei's incest, so of course I don't really give a fuck about Jon and Dany's weird, because she's his aunt now.
Yeah, I think in that kind of instance, I find it more like I'm more okay with it because they were not raised, of course, together.
And
they would have no way of knowing. I mean, you know, Will and I didn't do blood tests before we got married. He could be my cousin. You know what I mean? He's probably not, but that's the kind of thing you could run into like a fifth cousin and never know it for your whole life.
Okay, on the count of 3, say what level of cousins we would have to be for this to be okay. 1, 2, 3. Fifth. Unacceptable no matter what.
This is never gonna work.
Well, my point is that considering the moral stink the show has made such like a to-do about with Jaime and Cersei, it feels weird to then make the OTP also close. Do you know what I mean? It just I can just see Cersei like fuming in her grave. Like,
yeah, because she's not like a great aunt or like anything like once or twice removed. She is his father's aunt, sister. Yeah.
And it's just like it is a strange position the show has put itself in.
Yeah, I agree.
I also have wanted one thing and one thing only for like 4 seasons, and I'm just not going to get it. And it was Lady Stoneheart.
Oh yeah, no, we're def not. I'm real sad about it too.
Are you? Oh, I wanted it so bad.
If I'm not mistaken, it is like the final chapter of book 5 when we finally see her, and so it's like all the book readers have been left on this cliffhanger, and so I have a suspicion that Lady Stoneheart is going to be a big deal in the books, and the fact that they just didn't go there even a tiny bit in the show is very frustrating to me.
Because there was twice where we thought it was happening.
And because they mentioned her once or twice in the book before we actually, like, see her. Because there's like rumors of like a woman on the countryside, blah, blah, blah. But then we actually see her and the person is like, it's Lady Catelyn. And it's just like, what the fuck? And yeah, I'm super disappointed that has not happened.
Is that the end? Is that it for now?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk about Brienne, but I feel like we're going to have a lot.
And you even said you wanted to, but
I feel like we're going to have a lot to say about Brienne in the final season. Gwendolyn Christie, unbelievable. And I mean, one of the pictures in the Instagram is going to be her dress from the premiere.
We'll get to it in the final season. Yeah.
But yes,
did you see HBO made that their profile picture on Twitter?
I did, yeah. I did. I'm certain that we'll see a lot from her, so I'm not worried about not having time to get to her later, so. I mean, overall, we obviously love Game of Thrones. We've stuck it out for 8 years already, so what's a little more at this point?
I'm excited. I'm just actually out. I am tempered, but excited.
Yeah, same. I guess, do you want to do any quick predictions? Do you have any predictions for the new season?
I don't have predictions, but I have what I want.
Okay.
I am fine with Jon and or Dany or some combination of them on the throne. Sure. I'm also fine with Tyrion on the throne.
Cool, same. I think Tyrion's better suited to Hand of the King, but still, I'm with you.
And I want Sansa Queen in the North, and I want Arya as her hand.
I'm fine with that. I think Arya could get taken down a peg or two. She's getting real smug, but other than that, yeah. I will say, we didn't talk about Bran either. I will say...
Hold the door. There, it's covered.
I have a hard prediction that there are going to be between 1 and 3 major named characters dead before the end of episode 2, and I have a suspicion one of them will be a Stark. A remaining Stark.
Sansa, Arya, or Jon?
Or Bran.
Oh, Bran. I don't think...
You think all the Starks are safe till the end?
I think Sansa and Arya are. From where I'm sitting now, I can't see the point of keeping either of them around on this journey.
To die now?
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I think Sansa, Arya, and Jon, I mean, because here's the thing. I guess we could lose one of the girls, but if it's Sansa and Arya lives, I'll be breathing fire. You'll have a third dragon. So
Same.
And I guess it all depends on how, but we already covered that I want Jaime to kill Cersei, and... Yeah, I mean, Varys is another player that we didn't really talk about that is still around, but...
Yeah, he's still kicking too.
I would love for Missandei and Grey Worm to have a happy ending.
Oh, no, one of them's definitely going to die.
You think so? I think we've been through so much of it. I think we could have a string of happy endings. I mean, I don't think it's certain, but I think we could... I think we've paid our dues. I think we could have a series of happies.
I would want to believe that if at every single turn they hadn't taken the sad way.
Not many, because you'll quit a show if it does every single turn. But
that's true, because I did quit The Walking Dead. But yeah. I'm more cautious about it than that. I think we're gonna lose more characters than that.
I think we'll lose a few, but I mean, we're gonna lose Jaime and Cersei.
I think we could lose Tyrion.
Yeah, we could. Yeah. Well, I said Jon and or Dany, so I think we could lose one or both of them.
That's also fair. Then who would be on the Iron Throne?
Tyrion.
Oh, okay. Fair. Also fair.
I mean, I guess Sansa could, but I wouldn't. I think the North needs to be its own entity, and I think that Sansa was raised to be, a princess and then a queen, and I think it's her destiny.
Okay, Dark Horse, Lyanna Mormont takes it all.
Okay.
Is that a good note to
Play
go out on?
Play the Conrad greeting card.
Okay. Okay, well, we are covering this weekly on the Patreon coming up from the 14th, and then for 6 weeks after that, they're playing them all in one straight shot. So if you are interested in that, we give the weekly episodes for our $3 patrons and above, so definitely head on over and, join up. We're fun. We have lots of content, lots of prizes. We're going to be updating it at all times. We just have to kind of keep going and figure out what kind of prizes people want. So I guess other than that, if you want to follow us on Twitter, our handle is @SoI'mWatching. We are also on Instagram @SoI'mWatchingThisShow. In addition to Facebook and Tumblr, So I'm Watching This Show. Do you want to put the Reigns of Castamere on the Spotify playlist?
Uh-huh.
Other than that, just make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. And that's it for us.